All right. Shalom, everyone. Welcome to the Bible study, but today it's a special Bible study because tonight is actually the Feast of Purim. And we're going to be having a quick PowerPoint in regards of the history of Purim and also to get a better understanding on Purim. Just move this over here real quick. All right. Leverage. All right. I know Deacon Shamar is getting ready to PowerPoint. So we're going to go into a history, and we're also going to go into a chronology on understanding what exactly was happening politically, socially during the time of Purim. Sometimes we have a perception within the Bible that many things that happen in the Bible is the only thing that was going on in Israel, and everything that it goes on is either happened after or before. Certain things were happening simultaneously. So we're going to go into that history and to get a better understanding on that. Okay, and I think the brother's going to cue the light. All right, there you go. That's perfect. All right, the water. All right. Okay, the water digging Shamar. All right, oh, praise the Most High. Okay, so we're going to go to a quick, brief Purim history and also understanding. Many of you guys already know the history and the purpose of it, but I'm going to go into a little more in depth and going from a different angle today. Also, what we're going to touch today, and I do apologize for being a little late. The keys, I thought I had it in my pocket. My wife had it, and me and Greg was running around. He was speed reading, trying to get the keys. Sometimes the devil trying to put a monkey wrench in our systems, but we prevail. All praise to the Most High. Okay, so let's go to the next slide real quick. Today, Deacon Shamar, if you can read that real quick, we're going to go into a quick introduction of what we're going to be discussing today in regards of the Feast of Purim.
What is it about? During the reign of King Xerxes, in the Medo-Persian captivity, Haman, the son of the Hammedatha, the Agite, the enemy of the Jews from the seed of the Amalek, in Esther chapter 3, due to his hatred towards Mordecai, devised and planned against the Jews to destroy them, and cast Pyrrha, or lots, to consume them and to destroy them. Queen Esther, niece of Mordecai, made petition with King Xerxes to help deliver her people from the hands of Haman. Haman eventually hung on the same gallows which he built for the purpose of hanging Mordecai. And that's the chapter 7, verse 8.
So basically, the way we celebrate the Feast of Purim, we actually go to the story, and we feast for 2 days. It's a 2-day remembrance, and which is started today, sundown, and it will end on Thursday, sundown. So Tuesday, sundown to Wednesday, sundown is 1 day. Wednesday, sundown to Thursday, sundown is another day. Many people ask me, Elder, is this a Shabbat? And things of that nature. Now, within the scripture, it says that it will be a memorial and it's a day of rest. And this was decreed by the leaders of Israel at that time. So some people will call these feasts the lesser feasts. Some people will call it the minor feasts and things of that nature. You may hear these terms. It's comfortable because you don't find these feasts during the Levitical priesthood, Leviticus 23. But these feasts, Purim and Hanukkah, did not exist during that time. So it was a common thing within our forefathers when we had a major event of deliverance. We performed or we marked that day as a day to remember, okay, and things of that nature. So those that have to work, that's great, it's okay. Just try to come together with your family, have dinner, and read, more important to your children on these important days, okay? And also was a custom for us to give portion or gifts to one another. So this is be the feast that you could give gifts to one another. Okay, so we don't do it at Christmas. We'll do it today, you know, or tomorrow, whatever, and things of that nature. I think the Shabbat, we're going to be having gift giving and things of that nature. So everybody is bringing a gift. I think the limit is about $20, $25. The more than that, each male will bring a gift for a male, and each female will give a gift for a female. And then I think we're going to, everybody's going to just grab whatever from the bag. I think that's the way it's going to be, okay? And then just make sure you can write your name, you know, Gabar with love to whoever brother who received it, you know, so forth, so on, or whatever your name is, okay? Or sisters. All right, so that's what we're going to be doing this Shabbat, and I think Sister Patricia is actually going to have a meal. And of course, people donated $20 to collect for the meal, so we're going to have a good time, exchange gift, and so forth, so on. We're going to have different games for the kids, so it's going to be a fun night, okay? So next slide. Okay. All right, so this is and I think you could maybe move it a little bit, or it's fine. I mean, it's not don't move the other. Okay, it's probably have to be adjusted, but it's no big deal. Okay, so this represents basically, and this is from a Iranian website that is basically a Christian Iranian website that kind of goes into the history of Iran and what part they played in the Bible. Okay, so on top you have Cyrus, right? He is the founder of the Assyrian, the Persian and Medes Empire. He was able to kind of unify with the Medes and create the Medes and Persian Empire. So Cyrus is credited in history to starting that empire. So what beast is Cyrus within the 4 beasts of Daniel? The bear. Which number is that? The second, right? You got the first one, which is who? Babylonian, Nebuchadnezzar, Babylonian, right? The second one is the Persian Medes, what we're about to discuss now. The third one is what? The Grecians. Or the fourth is what? Rome, okay? All right. So I highlighted the Esther to show you that it was after the Persian Empire, during that reign, and it was, and myself and Elder Lawya, we was actually doing the discussion to try to actually get the point, the actual point. But it looks like this event with Esther and the event of Nehemiah and Ezra was going on simultaneously. However, from our research, it looks like the temple was first being built. And what happened is these are the Israelites, or this is the story with Esther of the Israelites that were scattered within the empire of the Persian Empire. Because there were certain Israelites that decided to say, you know, after the Babylonian Empire collapsed, and the Most High made a decree through, who's the one who made the decree? I believe was Darius. Darius was the one who made a decree, go and rebuild the temple, right? So they're very close in time period, right? Now, what happened is Darius said, go Israel, go build the temple. That history is recorded through the book of Nehemiah and Ezra, right? Now, the book of Esther is recording specifically those Israelites that did not went back to Israel and stood in the 27 providence, I think, or 22 providence, or 120 providence within that time. So these is 2 stories going on simultaneously. So Esther is recording the story of the Israelite that decided Israel's too far. I've been here for 70 years. You know, my wife and kids are here. I'll go to the feast, but I'm not going to help and build. I may send some money, you know, I may send some support, but I'm going to stay here in one of these provinces within the Persian Empire. You guys understand? So it's simultaneously, okay? So kind of give you a brief historical, okay? And these are the dates, okay? 539 to 530 is the rule, and then these are over here are the Persian names. So this is, so when you go into the history, if you see this word called Koresh, this is actually talking about Cyrus. Okay, so this website, it kind of gives you the history of that. And when you're reading about Koresh in history, you could say, oh snap, I'm talking about, I know, the guy of the Bible. Okay, so things of that nature. So this is a good website you could go to. It kind of gives you the biblical names and also the historical secular history to kind of give you that understanding. Okay, all right, next slide. All right, this is a quick brief history of the Persian Empire. So we're going to start out, there's 6 bullet points that you can also get from this website, and it kind of gives you the a brief history of the Persian Empire. So that Shamar, if you can read that if you don't mind.
Cyrus was the founder of the Mede-Persian Empire. He conquered Media, Lydia, and Babylonian empires because he was gracious. He was a gracious liberator. He permitted to conquer nations to worship their own gods. He was benevolent towards various captive people who had suffered under the rule of Nebuchadnezzar and his successors. The Jews allowed to return to Jerusalem to rebuild their temple, and Cyrus even gave financial help. Also built Paragade, a royal residence 100 miles north of Shiraz.
Okay, so this is, you can find all this information. So one thing that was different from the Babylonian Empire versus the Persian Medes, the Persian Medes were considered to be liberators in this sense that if you was conquered by Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar, you have to worship his God, you have to follow his rules in regards of your religious understanding. Persians were the first one. You may see in history that it was the Hellenistic, empire, or Greeks were the one that were the first concept of allowing you to worship different gods. That's not true. They got that from the Persians. That's why in the book of Revelations, matter of fact, this is a bit sidestep, but Shamar, if you don't mind, get the book of Revelations chapter 13. Okay. Do you have enough light? Can you see, or you got? Yeah. Okay. All right. Very good. Because each nation learned from each other, and they kind of picked up certain things to say, okay, I'm going to use what works in my previous nation that I conquered, but I'm going to also take and make things different. So Persian was the one were first considered to be the first liberator and things of that nature. When you go, there's another, and David, you may help me out with this. What is the papyrus that is when the Jews that were in Egypt and they were writing to the Persian king that they were being prosecuted by the Egyptians, and why they were not allowed to worship their God in the Egyptian providence. It was the papyrus something. If it comes to you, let me know. But this is also, and I should have brought that in, this is also showing you because the reason they were writing to the king of Persia is because they view Persia as the liberator, and they were more liberal in regards of religion. And whatever religion you want to follow, you could do it. That's all you got to do is just pay the taxes. Your armies come to me. You go all your riches, but you can worship your God as you please. Okay, and things of that nature. And he also donated certain financial to assist to do that, right? And to help rebuild the temples that Nebuchadnezzar destroyed, okay? But I forgot, it will come to me, okay? Shamar, read Revelations 13, verse 1, if you don't mind.
This is the book of Revelation, chapter 13, verse 1. And I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea. Having 7 heads and 10 horns. And upon his horns 10 crowns.
Now this 10 heads is talking about Rome, right? Now remember when Daniel was vexed in his spirit, and that he was trying to get more explanation of the vision, and the angel told him, well, you know, see out the book, it's not for, it's for the latter times. So in the book of Revelation is a continuation of the book of Daniel in regards to Revelation, understanding of the 4 beasts. So there's certain things in the book of Revelation you will find, you will not find in the book of Daniel in regards to the description, right? So let's read it.
And upon his heads the name of blasphemy. Verse 2. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard.
Now it was unto a leopard. Read.
And his feet were as the feet of a bear.
It had a feet like a bear. Read.
And his mouth as the mouth of a lion.
And had the mouth of a lion. These 3 characteristics represents what? Where do you found leopard, bear, and lion? In the book of Daniel. And what? And the prior beast. So this beast is an amalgamation of all the previous beasts. That's why it had all the characteristics. So the second beast had a, you know, was a bear, and it has 3 ribs in his teeth, right? The first beast was Nebuchadnezzar. It was a lion. It had wings. And of course, the third beast, which is the Greek, was like a leopard. That was Alexandria, right? So now in Revelation is giving you a more clue, telling you, okay, this Roman Empire is a combination of all previous 3. Okay, but it was more ferocious than the others and things of that nature. Read segment number 2, Shamar.
Number 2. Cambyses was the son of Cyrus and was given the task conquering Egypt. Okay, so when you see here, I got Lydia, Babylon, and Egypt. And those that have taken the Hebrew Bible Academy, if you have not taken it, please take it because it covers its history. The 3 ribs is referring to Lydia, Babylon, and Egypt, mentioned in Daniel 7 and 5. Okay, so the reason why these are the 3 ribs are referring there is because these were the most powerful nation within the provinces. So if you conquered those, because they had many provinces, they had about 120 different provinces. They have other kingdoms, but they were small kingdoms. Back then, if you capture Lydia, Babylon, and Egypt, you're good. And Lydia, I believe, is Asia Minor. And the reason why is because those 3 regions, Egypt, if you conquer Egypt, you got Africa. If you capture Lydia, which is Asia Minor, you got Europe. If you capture Babylon, you got the Middle East. So if you control those 3 points, boom, you can really control, because those are the trade routes in regards of trading and things of that nature. If you got to go to Africa, you got to go through Egypt. If you want to go to Europe, you got to go to Asia Minor, so forth, so on. So these areas was powerful. If you had these controls of these regions, you was a man. Okay, and Israel is a very important landmass, because Israel is right in the middle. Israel is actually it connect all the major what is that word I'm looking for? Train routes, and also continents. Right. All right. So let's go through. So. All the other points, you can read this on your own when you get home. If you go to the website, go to verse 3 real quick, point 3. Pseudo-Smyrnis, the impostor, ruled for several months.
Right, so there was a guy, if you go into the history of the Persian, there was a king that inserted authority and tricked the people, convinced the people that he was actually ordained to be king. And because Darius at that time and then the kings were fighting wars, they was able to convince the people, this guy Pseudo-Smyrnis, that's what it's called in history, because he lied about being the king. And then and you go into the history, he got killed. If you read number 4.
Darius, after killing Pseudo-Smyrnis, defeat 9 kings in 19 battles in 2 years. These victories are recorded in the famous Beth-Un inscription carved in the rocks some 30 miles from Kermasha. Darius began the great work of Persepolis, located 30 miles north of Saras. The main hall has the inscription, "I am Darius, great king, King of kings, king of the lands.
And remember, that term King of Kings is not original in regards of the Bible. The reason why that term is found in other regions or in other writings, I think Nebuchadnezzar called himself the King of Kings. You can find that also Daniel called Nebuchadnezzar King of Kings, because the term King of Kings is a king who is over other kings. So when the Bible says the Lord, he will be the ultimate King of Kings and Lord of Lords, he said he's going to take all the crowns. You understand? So it's a Middle Eastern term, or an African term, because you can also find that term in Africa, in that region, is a king that it controls other kings. So Christ is going to be the ultimate King of Kings and Lord of Lords when he comes back. So you guys understand, okay? All right, let's go to the next slide. These things you can find on your own. Okay, so let's read the book of Esther. Let's go into a brief history to kind of set the stage. Many of you guys already know the story. I just want to touch on it for those that may not be familiar. So let's go to Esther 1:1.
Esther chapter 1, verse 1. Now it came to pass in the days of Azarias. This is Azarias which reigned from India even unto Ethiopia, over 107 provinces.
Yeah, so 125 provinces. That's, you know, so it went all the way from Ethiopia and so forth, so on. Can you read it?
And in those days, when King Azarias sat on the throne of his kingdom, which was in Shushan the palace, in the 3rd year of his reign, he made feast unto all the princes and servants, the power of Persia and Media, the nobles and princes of the provinces being before him. Verse 4, and when he showed the riches of his glorious kingdom and the honor of his excellent majesty many days, even 180 days. And when these days were expired, the king made a feast unto all the people that were present in Shushan the palace, both unto the great and small, 7 days, in the court of the garden of the king's palace. Verse 6, where were white, green, and blue hangings, fastened with cords of fine linen, and purple to silver rings, and pillars of marble. The beds were of gold and silver, upon the pavement of red and blue.
So he had a big feast. Okay, you can read this in more details and things of that nature. Let's go to jump down at verse 10.
Verse 10. And on the 7th day, when the heart of the king were merry with wine, he commanded Mahaman.
Mahalan, when you go into other commentary, is Haman. It's another name for Haman. But that's a whole different discussion. We're going to get into that later. Keep reading.
Bester, Harbona, Bectha, and Abatha, Zethar, and Carcass, the 7 chamberlains that were served in the presence of Xerxes the king.
So Haman, which is another name for Haman, was one of the top 7 advisors of the king. So he was an inside man. Okay, let's read.
Verse 11, to bring Vashti the queen before the king with the crown royal.
Come on.
To show the people and the princes her beauty.
Come on.
For she was fair to look on.
Come on.
But the queen Vashti refused to come at the king's commandment by the chamberlains.
Come on.
Therefore was the king very wroth.
Come on.
And his anger burned with him. Verse 13. Then the king said to his wise men, which knew the times, for so was the king's manner towards all that knew the law and judgment.
Okay, next slide.
Verse 14. And the next unto him was Karshna and Sithar and Admatha, Tarshish, Meres, Marsina.
So jump down to verse 16.
Verse 16. Memucan answered before the king and the princes. Vashti the queen had not done wrong to the king only, but also to the princes, and to all the people that all in all the provinces of the king of Xerxes. Verse 17. For this deeds of the queen shall come abroad unto all women, so that they shall despise their husbands in their eyes.
So when you go and you read further up, and the queen did not come out when she's supposed to, when the king wanted her to come out, you know, they had a meeting within the advisors, said, hey, we can't let this be because she's kind of like the example of the women, and that we allow her to do it, and every woman would think, you know, for us to do it. So things of that nature, okay? So you can read on your own a more detailed description of what happened, and eventually the king, he decided to say, okay, I'm going to divorce my wife. I think he killed her. I think he arrested her. I think he put it in he arrested her, correct?
Put her away.
He put her away, right? And then he said, okay, I'm going to give me a new wife. And then he kind of said, you know, collect the best women in the providence, and then put them in the chamberlain, train them how to be a queen, and I'm going to choose one of them, right? So let's go to the next slide. Okay, so we're in chapter 2, verse 1. And this is that's where Esther comes in, right? So let's read it.
After these things, when the wrath of King Xerxes was appeared, he remembered Vashti and what she had done, and what was decreed against her. Then said the king's servant that ministered unto him, let there be a fair young virgin sought for the king, and let the king appoint officers in the provinces of the kingdom, that they may gather together all the fair young virgins unto Shushan the palace, to the house of the women, and unto the custody of Haggai the king's chamberlain.
Okay, now when you read this, also I think in chapter 1, or in chapter 3, I got it. I think it's chapter 3. It's very early in the story. Mordecai, he actually discovered a plot to kill the king. So that was also a thing that we need to keep in mind. Okay, pick it up at verse 5.
Verse 5. Now in Shushan the palace there was a certain Jew, whose name was Mordecai, the son of Jair, the son of Shemi, the son of Kish, a Benjamite, who had been carried away from Jerusalem with the captivity which had been carried away from Jeconiah the king of Judah, whom Nebuchadnezzar the king of Babylon had carried away.
So keep reading.
And he had brought up Hadassah.
Hadassah, that's his niece. Read.
That is Esther.
Esther. So Hadassah was the Hebrew name, and her, I think that's not Syrian. Esther. What origin is that name? Persian. Thank you. Okay, it's a Persian origin and things of that nature. Okay, read.
His uncle's daughter. For she had neither father nor mother.
Come on.
And the maid was fair and beautiful.
Come on.
When Mordecai, when her father and her mother were dead, took for his own daughter.
So he adopted her as his own daughter. Okay, so this is a family or a group that did not went back to Jerusalem, either because of distance or what have you. They stood in the providence. Okay, so simultaneously, while this was going on, the brothers that went back to Jerusalem to rebuild the temple, they had a whole different issue. When you go into the book of Ezra, chapter 4, it goes into they were building the temple, and then remember in 2 Kings 17, when the Syrian Empire conquered the province of Israel, they brought in strangers and they converted them to, what the world would call Judaism, to the laws of God. And these were now the Samaritans, right? Now, and I think we had a discussion about that. There was 3 groups, and I'm still doing that history and things like that. You had the Samaritans. It was 3 different groups within that group. And things of that nature, but that's a whole different, lesson altogether. Now, when you go into the scripture, into Ezra 4, they say, listen, we want to rebuild the temple with you because we were converted by the Assyrian Empire and we worship your God. And then the Jews told them, nah, you have nothing to do with us. We're going to build the temples on our own. And then they became envious of our work, and then they began to write letters to the king at that time to say, hey, you should not allow them to do this and things like that. So all of this was going on simultaneously to kind of give you a historical backdrop, right? So let's read it.
Verse 8. So it came to pass when the king's commandment and his decree was heard, and when many maidens were gathered together unto Shushan the palace, to the custody of Haggai, that Esther was brought also onto the king's house to the custody of Haggai, keeper of the women. And the maiden pleased him, and she obtained kindness of him, and he speedily gave her things of purification.
So the king made a decree in every providence. You have, of course, commanders and generals, overseers of each providence. He made a decree, I need a new wife, get the best, do a context or some form of, bring all the women, look at every woman who's not married, virgins, and then go through a period of purification. Purification from the Persian perspective, it would basically, they'll take the woman, they kind of will teach them proper etiquette, how to put their shoulders back and dress like a lady and walk. And when you see the king, you bow down, you never look into his eye. So it was a period of purification from that perspective. Training them how to deal with a king because they may be potential queens. Okay, so there was a time of that, right? Okay, so let's keep reading.
And he preferred her and her maids onto the best place of the house of the women.
Come on.
Verse 10, Esther had not showed her people nor her kindred, for Mordecai had charged her that she should not show it. Okay,
meaning don't tell people that you are an Israelite. So they probably thought she was a Persian or she was a Babylonian or a Syrian, things of that nature, okay? Let's read.
Verse 11, and Mordecai walked every day before the court of the women's house to know how Esther did and what should become of her. Now when every maid turn was come to go into King Xerxes, after that she had been 12 months, according to the manner of women, for she was the days of her purification accomplished, to wit, 6 months with oil of myrrh, and 6 months with sweet odors, and with other things for the purifying of the women. Then thus came every maiden unto the king, whatsoever she desired were given her, to go with her out of the house of the women unto the king's house. Verse 14, in the evening she went, and on the morrow she returned into the second house of the women, to the custody of Shashgaz, the king's chamberlain, which kept the concubines. She came in unto the king no more, except the king delighted in her, and that she was called by name. Now when the turn of Esther, the daughter of Abihail, the uncle of Mordecai, who had taken her from his daughter, was come to go in unto the king, she required nothing but what Haggai, the king's chamberlain, the keeper of the women, appointed.
And usually the chamberlain, the keeper of the women, these were most likely eunuchs. I think I covered that a few weeks back in regards to that, when Christ, remember, said that certain men will become eunuchs of men, other men become eunuchs from birth, and other men become eunuchs for the temple or the kingdom of heaven. This is referring to most nations used to have men that were either two things. They were either homosexuals, or they would cut their private parts, so they would make sure that there would be not any hanky-panky. So usually most nations used to pick these out of these two people. They either would cut your private parts, and you could deal with the women, and then the king would know, okay, my wife is okay, my wife to be is okay, my daughter's okay, and so forth. So usually private security, you were usually eunuchs, unfortunately, within the history. Okay, so let's read.
And Esther obtained favor in the sight of all them that look upon her.
Okay, next slide.
Verse 16. So Esther was taken unto King Xerxes into the house royal in the 10th month, which is the month of Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign. And the king loved Esther above all the women, and she obtained grace and favor in his sight more than all the virgins, so that he set the royal crown upon her head and made her queen instead of Vashti. Verse 18. Then the king made a great feast unto all the princes and his servants, even Esther's feast. And he made a release up to the provinces and gave gifts according to the state of the king. Verse 19. And when the virgins were gathered together the second time, then Mordecai sat in in the king's gate. Esther had not yet showed her kindred nor her people, as Mordecai had charged her. For Esther did the commandment of Mordecai, like as when she was brought up with him. Verse 21, in those days while Mordecai sat in the king's gate, two of the king's chamberlains, Bigthan and Teresh, of those which kept the door, were wroth, and sought to lay hands on King Ahasuerus. And the king, and Lawya, verse 22, and the things were known to Mordecai.
Right, this is when Mordecai found out the plot, right? Let's read. Who
told it unto Esther the queen, and Esther certified the king thereof in Mordecai's name. And when the inquisition was made of the matter, it was found out. Therefore they were both hanged on a tree, and it were written in the book of the Chronicles before the king.
Okay, and that's important because when you keep reading, when there was the whole discussion, what should we do about the Jews, this event was very important to favor the children of Israel. So let's go to the next slide.
Esther 3 verse 1. And after these things did King Ahasuerus promote Haman the son of Hammedatha the Agagite.
So there was the 7 viziers mentioned in the book, the first chapter. Haman, which his name is interchangeable with Haman, and also what's the other one? I forgot. Mahaman, right? Thank you, sir. They're both the same person, but he got elevated above the 7 or the other 6. Okay, so this is the story. Read.
And advanced him and set his seat above all the princes that were with him, and all the king's servants that were in the king's gate bowed and reverenced Haman, or Haman, for the king had so commanded concerning him. But Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reverence. Then the king's servant, which were in the king's gate, said unto Mordecai, why transgressed thou the king's commandment? Now it came to pass, when they spake daily unto him, he hearkened not unto them, that they told Haman to see whether Mordecai matters would stand. For he had told them that he was a Jew. And when Haman saw that Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reverence, then was Haman full of wrath, and he brought scorn to lay hands on Mordecai alone.
So there's 2 things you have to pick up here. When you go into this area, the Persian and Medes Empire, there were all kinds of different racial groups there, but a lot of them were what the world would consider Middle Eastern and also African. Okay, showing you that Haman had to actually announce he's a Jew. So the only way for a Jew to hide within that region, he must look or be a melanated type of skin. You understand? Because people did not know who he was and things like that. So showing you that he looked like everyone else and things of that nature. Okay, so let's read.
For they had showed him the people of Mordecai. Wherefore Haman sought to destroy all the Jews that were throughout the whole kingdom of Ahasuerus.
Come on.
Even the people of Mordecai.
Come on. That was it? Okay. Yeah. Next slide. Okay, so Haggai, this guy or these people, Haggai or that name was not necessarily a person or a family tree or family lineage, okay? And this is the Strong's H90, and we're gonna go into that history. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, this is 1 Samuel 15. Now, in the book of Numbers, it's prophesied that the Most High told Israel that from generation to generation you will have what? War with the Amalekites, right? I would get wrong, confused with this Amalekites. The Abe always gets me all messed up. Okay, so this guy is the descendant of that family tree. Okay, so we're going to go into that history, and this is the #1 region, the one kind of like what broke the straw's back with the Most High, and saw that he told Saul, I want you to kill every single one of them, and he chose not to. He left some survivor, and then there's the reason why the Most High said, you're out of here, Saul, I'm going to bring somebody else, right? So let's go into that history real quick.
1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 1. Samuel also said unto Saul, the Most High sent me to anoint thee to be king over his people, over Israel. Now therefore hearken thou unto the voice of the words of the Most High. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, I remember that which Amalek did to Israel, how he laid wait for him in the way, when he came up from Egypt.
Come on.
Now go and smite Amalek.
Come on.
And utterly destroy all that they have.
Come on.
And spare them
so
not.
You notice that Amalek is not a person, is a day, is a people, right? Keep reading.
But slay both, he said, and spared them not, but slay both man and woman, infant and suckling, ox and sheep, camels and donkeys. Verse 4, and Saul gathered the people together and numbered them in Telaim, 200,000 footmen and 10,000 men of Judah.
Now, when you go into the backdrop, and this could be a lesson on its own, why did the Most High want to, Saul to kill even the kids, even the animals, everything? When you go to the Amalek, they merged themselves with the Horites, which is a seed of Canaan, which were dealing with the fallen angel technology and also fallen angel spirits and things of that nature. So clearly this is talking about some form of genetic purging, some defilement outside of just literally just wickedness, because it even killed the animals. There got to be some DNA that he wanted to destroy out of the face of the earth. Joe, but that's a whole different lesson altogether. And Greg, you had your hand up. Mount Seir, yeah. So the original Mount Seir were actually descendants of the kids of Canaan, okay? And then he kind of conquered that area. So Mount Seir predates Esau. He just adopted that name, yeah.
And that goes back to when in the book of Jonah, when they said everyone fasted and everyone was cleansed, everyone go get sin, the animals and all of that.
Right. Yeah, so there's some DNA pollution that they were dealing with. So the Most High may, if you read this in the surface, you mean like, okay, that's kind of crude. But the Most High deals with that in regards of purging out. And when you go into certain African and Eastern, certain, what's the book of, Asher, what's that tribe? And the Aboriginals, not the Aboriginals, the Aboriginals do it too. Not the Hawaiians, the one in Brazil. And the Amazons, the Aztec, the Amazon folks, the people that are in the regions. There is, when you go into certain history, that if a child gets sick, they separate that child from everybody else or somebody. And if they feel they cannot heal them or an Adam, they actually get rid of the child and things of that nature to purge out that disease. So clearly, when this could, like I said, could be a lesson in its own, they was affected with some disease. Remember when the Most High told Israel, when you go into the land, clean everything of the wormwood and wash everything and purified all the gold and things of that nature, and then you got leprosy, and you got someone who has a leprosy, separate them and things of that nature. So it's clearly some defilement with the land of Canaan that the Canaanites and the Edomites clearly was defiling, mixing with, genome splicings and things of that nature. Some genetic, so the Most High wanted to get rid of that and burn it out. Okay, so that's why he said get rid of everything. So let's read.
Verse 5. And Saul came to the city of Amalek and laid wait in the valley. And Saul said to the Kenites.
Now the Kenites are the descendants of the father-in-law of Moses, Jethro. That tribe or that Canaanites is not Canaan like the Canaanites. It's a different Canaanites. Okay, they are the descendants of the Midianites and those people. A lot of them were actually Gentiles that came with us in the time of Moses. So the Most High told Samuel to tell Saul tell the Canaanites, get out of there. Okay, because we were about to, you get caught with the destruction we were about to give, right? So let's read. Read that again, actually.
And Saul said unto the Kenites, Go, depart, get you down from among the Amalekites.
Come on.
Lest I destroy you with them.
Come on.
For he showed kindness to all the children of Israel.
They show kindness, so that's why this is going back into when we coming out of Egypt. You saw kindness, so listen, you don't get out of here because we were about to go to war, but they were mingling. Eventually, the Most High told Israel to wipe them out because they also went against us as well. But that's a whole different story altogether. Keep reading.
And when they came up out of Egypt, so when the Kenites departed from among the Amalekites. Verse 7. And Saul smote the Amalekites from Havilah until thou comest to Shur, that is over against Egypt.
Come on.
And he took Agag, the king of the Amalekites,
come on,
alive, and utterly destroyed all the people with the edge of the sword.
But he kept the family tree, the kingship, he kept them alive. Read.
But Saul and the people spared Agag.
Spare Agag, read.
And the best of the sheep, and of the oxen, and of the fatling, and of the lambs.
Come on.
And all that was good. And would not utterly destroy them.
And not utterly destroy them, not him. Because Agag was a family. It was a family tree of the royal family within. He did not destroy them. Read.
But everything that was vile and refused, that they destroyed utterly. Verse 10. Then came the word of the Most High unto Samuel, saying, It repenteth me that I have set up Saul to be king.
And this is really Christ, the word of God. That's a whole different lesson together, but this was really Christ. Let's read.
For he turned back from following me.
And this is, when it goes into the scriptures that the Most High repents not and things of that nature, people will say, well, look, he repented here. Because in certain times, the word of God is referring to his father. And he's the word of God, and he's speaking of his father. But over here is Christ. Because it was Christ himself that was testing Abraham. Remember the angel of the Lord? Now I know that you will serve God. He was not speaking of himself. He was speaking of his father. So he was the angel in the burning bush. He was the messenger. He was always the word of God. And the word of God became flesh and dwelt among us. So sometimes it's Christ speaking in first person, speaking about what he feel, and then sometimes he's speaking on behalf of the Father. So let's read it.
And have not performed my commandments. And it grieved Samuel, and he cried unto the Lord all night. And when Samuel rose early to meet Saul in the morning, it was told Samuel, saying, Saul came to Carmel, and behold, he set him up a place. Okay,
so when you read the story on your own, this basically was the downfall of Saul. His book was ready written. The Most High was ready looking to get another king, and he was trying to bring sacrifice and plead with Samuel. And after a while, he began to use magic and what's that word when you bring the dead back to life? Mangromanism and things of that nature. The Most High is like, you're too late. You're a dead man walking. You're out of here, right? You on borrowed time. Then he anointed David, right? So that's a history. You can read that on your own. Go to the next slide. You could skip that. Let's see here. You could skip that. That's basically going to the same thing. Matter of fact, read the last verse, 23. When you read before, he was like, matter of fact, start at verse 20.
1 Samuel 15 and 20. And Saul said unto Samuel, Yea, I have obeyed the voice of the Lord, and have gone the way which the Lord sent me.
And that was a lie, because he kept some of the kings alive. Read.
And have brought Agag, the king of the Amalek.
Come on.
And have utterly destroyed the Amalekites.
Come on.
But the people took of the spoil sheep and oxen, the chief of the things which should have been utterly destroyed.
Come on.
To sacrifice unto the Lord thy power.
So he was trying to make he was trying to change, try to smooth, it was for, some sacrifice for the father, But Samuel told him, listen, killed and destroyed everything, right? Keep reading.
Verse 22, and Samuel said, have the Most High as great delight in burnt offering and sacrifice?
And remember, that was never really a desire of the Most High. What he desired is do what I tell you to do, right? Let's read it.
As in obeying the voice of the Lord?
Come on.
Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice.
Come on.
And to hearken than the fat of the rams.
Come on.
For rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft.
So he was telling you how important is obedience to the Father. Because rebellion to the Father is as witchcraft. Read.
And stubbornness is iniquity and idolatry.
Come on.
But thou hast rejected the word of the Lord. He have also rejected thee from being king.
So it's they will see it, right? So let's go back to Esther. Next slide. And let's pick it up. So that's the history that Haman knew and he remembered. So he said, you know what? You were trying to kill my family. Now I'm going to try to kill your family. To show you that there were different Hagarenes and Agites, in different provinces of the world. It was not only one sect of family. And because I think what happened is when you go into King David, he wiped them out too. Okay? But to show you there was other people because this is way after David, right? So let's read it.
Esther chapter 3, verse 3. And these things did King Ahasuerus promote Haman, the son of Hammedatha the Agite, and advance him, and set his seat above all the princes that were with him.
Okay, so you could go on his story and things of that nature. Pick it up at verse 7.
Verse 7. In the first month, that is the month of Nisan.
Which is what considered today, what region, what time period? Nisan. March, springtime, right? Right, let's read.
In the 12th year of King Ahasuerus.
Come on.
They cast Pur, that is the lot, before Haman from day to day, and from month to month, to the 12th month, that is the month of Adar.
The month of Adar is what month is that? March. Nope. Adar. Not Abib. Adar is, yeah, February, like around this time, because that's when the feast was marked to be celebrated. So from March all the way to February, they was casting lots and betting how many Israelites they could kill in the different provinces, right? That's what Haman was doing. Read.
And Haman said unto King Ahasuerus, there is a certain people scattered abroad and dispersed among the people in all the provinces of the kingdom, and their laws were diverse from all people. Neither keep they the king's law. Therefore it is not for the king's profit to suffer them. Verse 9, if it please...
Right, so excuse me, I'm sorry. The lot, it was a tradition they were doing, so it looks like the Israelites were not doing that. So this could have probably been like a feast they were doing, gambling, because that's what basically another word for lots, casting lots or what have you. Between the months of March and the month of February, they began to cast lots. And then Haman be told, hey, you know, these Jews out here are not doing what we're doing. So this looks like there was a festival and things of that nature, right? So let's read.
Verse 9, if it please the king, let it be written that they may be destroyed. And I will pay 10,000 talents of silver to the hands of those that have the charge of the business.
So when you notice the pattern with Purim and Hanukkah, those two feasts are actually mocking our enemies, because they did this. They said, when were they doing this? And therefore we're going to do that on that day to say, listen, our God deliver us from you. Remember in the book of Maccabees, when they counted, like, when will the heathens defile the temple? On the 25th day of the 9th month. Okay, that's the date we're going to start to celebrate our feast of Hanukkah, to mock the nation. They did the same thing here. Okay, so let's read.
To bring it into the king's treasury. Verse 10, and the king took his ring from his hand and gave it unto Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agite, the Jews' enemy. Verse 11, and the king said unto Haman, the silver is given to thee, the people also, to do with them as it seemeth good to thee.
And when you read the story, let's go to the next slide. We're going to go into a history. Who was Haman and things of that nature. And I should have added the other slide. When you keep reading, Haman was a sorcerer. And I think this is not covered here, but this is in the Jewish encyclopedia. And this encyclopedia, I actually like it because it's actually over 100 years old. So any book that's over 100 years old is open to the public. You can't sell. It's part of history now. So that thing is 100-something years. After a while, you got to give it up to the public. So that's why you could find like the book of Asher or the book of for free online, because and especially who's the guy who translated what's the guy who translated the book of Jasher from the Hebrew? The Elder Rawchaa said use that version. Charles. He translated about in the 1800s. So right now is no longer private property. It's public property because it's part of history. So this one is actually over 100 years old. Sometimes this one they give more information, and you can get it online because it's actually for free. It's open. It's considered open to the public. Okay, so let's read this history from the Jewish encyclopedia.
Right, Haman the Agagite, the son of Hammedatha, chief minister of King Ahasuerus, and his name indicates Haman was descendant of Gog, the king of the Amalekites, on account of his attempt to exterminate the Jews in the kingdom of Ahasuerus. He was frequently called the persecutor of the Jews. His machination against the Jews and his downfall and remembered during the feast of Purim, filled with annoyance because Mordecai did not bow before him. Haman resolved upon the extermination of the Jews throughout the whole kingdom. He drew lots to determine the day of the massacre, and the lot fell on the 13th of Adar. He offered the king 10,000 talents of silver for permission to do with the Jews as he pleased. The permission was granted, and he accordingly dispatched letters to all the parts of Persian kingdom to massacre the Jews on the 13th of Adar. His intrigues, however, were baffled by Esther. In order to throw him off his guard, she invited him to a banquet, to which she had also asked the king. Haman, looking upon this as an indication of a special favor, in his pride went so far as to prepare a gallows whereon to hang Mordecai. But in that night a sudden change occurred in Haman's fortune. His own answer to the king's question, what should be done to him whom the king delighted to honor, which Haman supposed referred to himself, obliged Haman to lead Mordecai.
And did you caught the part when it said he was an astrologer too? You can't figure it, but you can read this on your own because it goes into a more in-depth understanding. And also says here, I have it, the second page of the Jewish encyclopedia says, Haman is identified by the Talmud to be Maccanis, the same guy that is mentioned in the book of Esther. Okay, so when you go into it, one of the 7 princesses, in Esther 1 and 14, so forth, so on. So it's a different name of the same guy and things of that nature. You go into other writings and things of that nature. So you could go down your own Jewish encyclopedia in regards of that. Okay, next slide.
Esther chapter 9, verse 9. Now in the 12th month, that is the month of Adar, on the 13th day of the same, when the king's commandments and his decree drew near to be put in execution, in the day that the enemies of the Jews hoped to have power over them.
Right, so when you go into the Jewish encyclopedia and other writings, it was the reason why he chose these dates, because he was an astrologer and he figured the best time, astrologically speaking, I could conquer my enemies will be this particular time. So when you go into other writings, it's like a mocking of a mob. Like, listen, we're celebrating on a date that you fixed, dealing with the stars, that you supposed to be conquering us, but yet we conquer you. So it's a mockery that all these things don't mean anything when you have the power, your power in your side. So when you go into other writings, it goes into that, right? Let's read it.
Though it was turned to the contrary, that the Jews had ruled over them that hated them. The Jews gathered themselves together in their cities throughout all the provinces of the king, Ahasuerus.
So this is after, like we just read, Esther did a banquet, and then she told the king, she made herself look sad, and then the king was like, what's wrong, honey? And he said, well, Haman, he made a decree to kill my people. What you mean? What are you talking about? Well, I'm a Jew, and he made a decree, and you gave the permission to kill all the Jews within the provinces. Bring Haman and things of that nature. And he said, then when you go into the conversation, so, he went to Haman and said, hey, well, you plan to kill my queen too? And think, well, you didn't tell me this. So then eventually that's where he got killed. So this is kind of like the aftermath of that, right? So let's read it.
Verse 2, the Jews gathered themselves together in the cities throughout the provinces, and the king Ahasuerus to lay hand on such as sought to hurt, and no man could withstand them, for the fear of them fell upon all the people.
Right. So at this time, actually, when you go into the story as well, he took the ring from Haman and gave it to Mordecai. So Mordecai now became in the same position as Haman. So Haman was basically the same thing as Joseph in Egypt. He was the second in charge. He was the visor. People said you have to bow down to worship him, things of that nature. The same thing with Haman. He went up the ranks and things of that nature, right? So let's read it.
Verse 3, and all the rulers of the provinces and the lieutenants and deputies and officers of the king helped the Jews because the fear of Mordecai fell upon them.
Yeah, so everybody became, hey, what you need to do, Mordecai? I heard Haman, he was trying to kill someone in your family over here. Then let me help you over there, and so forth, so on, right? Let's go to verse 5.
Verse 5. Thus the Jews smote all the enemies with the stroke of the sword, and slaughtered and destruction, and did what they would unto these that hated them.
So all of this at the same time, Nehemiah was like talking to the Jews that were in the province. You got to come back and build the temple. They were, arguing with the natives that they were trying, not the natives, the converts, and you got nothing to do with me in regards to us dealing with this temple. And they were writing letters. So all this was happening simultaneously. Okay, and things of that nature. Okay, because this is our history, and it's important to us, and this is world changing to us, life changing. But when you go into the history, different kingdoms were going through different issues, and we were one of those several issues. So in our mind, it looks like the world was looking at this, but this was only a point to us. You understand what I'm saying? So you guys can look at the history from that perspective. Okay, it's important to us, but it was not. Not everybody knew about it or even care about it, okay? So let's continue reading.
Verse 6. And in Shushan the palace, the Jews slew and destroyed 500 men.
Jump down to verse 10.
Verse 10. Then the 10 sons of Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the enemy of the Jews, slew they. But all the spoils laid they not their hand. And on that day, the number of those that were slain in Shushan, the palace, was brought before the king.
Next slide.
Verse 9. Now in the 12th month, that is the month of Adar, on the 13th day of the same, when the king's commandment and his decree drew near to be two.
No, this is the same one. Go to two slide. My bad. One more. Okay, I repeated the same slide. My apologies. Verse 11. Go ahead.
Verse 11. And on that day, the number of those that were slain in Shushan, the palace, was brought before the king. And the king said unto Esther the queen, the Jews have slain and destroyed 500 men in Shushan the palace, and the 10 sons of Haman. What have they done in the rest of the king's provinces? Now what is the petition?
Okay, so hold that. Let's start at verse 17.
Verse 17. On the 13th day of the month Adar, And on the 14th day of the same...
Start at 15. Excuse me. I'm sorry. Salakia.
Verse 15. For the Jews that were in Shushan gathered themselves together on the 14th day.
So show you, these were not all the Jews, but the Jews that were in that area, this is what they decreed, right? Read.
Salakia. For the Jews that were in Shushan gathered themselves together on the 14th day, also of the month of Adar, and slew 300 men at Shushan. But on the prey they laid not their hand. But the other Jews that were in the king provinces gathered themselves together, and stood for their lives, and had rest from their enemies.
Come on.
And slew of their foes 75,000.
Come on.
But they laid not their hands on the prey.
Come on.
On the 13th day of the month of Adar, and on the 14th day of the same rested day, and made it a day of feasting and gladness.
So that day, on the month of Adar, on the 13th and on the 14th, they rested from all their fighting. So today we're going to take a rest, and we're going to praise the Most High for our victory, and then this is the beginning or the formation of the day of Purim. Let's read, which is a 2-day feast. Read.
Verse 18. But the Jews that were in Shushan assembled together on the 13th day thereof, and on the 14th of thereof, and on the 15th day of the same they rested, and made it a day of feasting and gladness.
Feast and gladness. Read.
Therefore the Jews of the village that dwelt in the unwalled towns made the 14th day of the month Adar a day of gladness and feasting.
Come on.
And a good day, and set in portions one to another.
Come on.
And Mordecai wrote these things and sent letters unto all the Jews that were in the provinces of the king Ahasuerus, both nigh and far.
Okay, next slide.
Verse 21. To establish this among them, they should keep the 14th day of the month of Adar, and on the 15th day of the same yearly, as the days wherein the Jews rested from their enemies, and the month which was turned unto them from sorrow to joy, and from mourning into a good day, that they should make them days of feasting and joy.
Come on.
And sending portions one to another.
So this would give portion and give gifts to one another. Read.
And gifts to the poor.
Come on.
And the Jews undertook to do as they had begun, and as Mordecai had written unto them, because Haman the son of Hammedatha the Agite, the enemy of the Jews, had devised against the Jews to destroy them, and had cast pur, that is, the lot, to consume them and to destroy them. But when Esther came before the king, he commanded by letters that his wicked device, which he had devised against the Jews, should return upon his own head, and that he and his sons should be hanged on the gallows. Wherefore they are called these days Purim, after the name of Pur. Therefore, for all the words of this letter, and of that which they had seen concerning this matter, and which had come unto them, the Jews ordained and took upon them, and upon their seed, and upon all such as joined themselves unto them. So
okay.
as it should.
Okay, reading. What verse you in?
Middle of verse 27.
Jump down to verse 30.
Verse 30. And he sent the letters unto all the Jews to the 127 provinces of the kingdom of Ahasuerus, with words of peace and truth, to confirm these days of Purim in their times appointed, according as Mordecai the Jew and Esther the queen had adjoined them, and as they had decreed for themselves and for their seed.
Now, when you have the word Jew, you can sometimes think of the word Judah, because remember, he was a Benjamite. The reason why he was called Jew is because he was of the kingdom of Judea or Judah, not the kingdom of Israel, because at that time you either were under the kingdom of Israel or under the kingdom of Judah. So that's, I I will call that word Judean rather than Jew, because that's a much later word. Okay, so you guys go and understand. All right, let's read.
The matter of fasting and a cry, verse 32. And the decree of Esther confirmed these matters of Purim, and it was written in the book.
In the book, next slide.
Chapter 10, verse 10.
Now, chapter 10, verse 10 is only 3 verses, right? But we all know that the book of Esther continues where? In the Apocrypha. So why did it cut the book half? We're going to go into the why that is. Let's read.
Verse 10. And the king Ahasuerus laid a tribute upon the land and upon the isles of the sea, and all the acts of his power and of his might, and the declaration of his greatness of Mordecai, whereunto the king advanced him. Are they not written in the book of the chronicles of the kings of Media and Persia? For Mordecai the Jew was next unto Ahasuerus, and king among the Jews, and accepted of the multitude of his brethren, seeking the wealth of his people, and speaking peace to all his seed.
Okay, and it kind of stops there. So when you go in the book of the Apocrypha, it picks up, all right? So because of time, we're going to pick it up in the book of chapter 16 in the book of Apocrypha, because in the Apocrypha, the book of Esther goes up to chapter 16. So this is chapter 10. There's 6 more chapters that were not kept in the Masoretic writings. Okay? So you have to go into the book of the Apocrypha, the book of Esther, chapter 16. It picks up in chapter 10, it goes into chapter 11, and chapter 12, and so forth, so on. Now, this is something very interesting that I didn't have time. And Shimon, you have the Apocrypha with you?
Yes.
Matter of fact.
All right.
Okay. Now, in chapter, and I should have put this up, right? In chapter, and basically, chapter 10, let me get it real quick. Uh, 55, that's what, bear with me, because I should get like a little light in here. Okay, so in chapter, it picks up in chapter verse 5. It actually says chapter 3, and over here it says 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 verse. So in your Apocrypha, it kind of just picks up. It directs, right? And then chapter 11, it basically is retelling the story. So chapter 10 is completed in the Apocrypha, and then chapter 11 is the end of the story, and now is Mordecai retelling the story after he is in his position. You guys understand that? So really, now in chapter 12, read chapter 12, verse 1, real quick. Deacon, I'm off. Shamar, I'm thinking I'm off from Philly. So we've been dealing with this pastor, so his name is stuck on me. Okay, Shamar, Deacon, I'm sorry. Chapter 12, verse 1.
Esther chapter 12, verse 1.
And this is not up in the screen. We'll probably put it up in the editing. Read.
And Mordecai took his rest in the court of Gabar and Tara to the two eunuchs of the king and keepers of the palace. And he heard their devices and searched out their purpose. Okay, so he's retelling the story. So chapter 11 is just retelling the story. Read verse 6. Verse 6. Howbeit, among the son of Amathus, the Agite. The Agite, right? Read. Who has in great honor with the king sought to molest the to honor, and the king sought to molest Mardosius, who is people because of two. That's Mordecai. That's the Greek version of his name. Read. and his people because of 2 eunuchs of the king.
Okay, so now, but when you keep reading, it's retelling the story, okay, and it tells the story of Esther became queen and she discovered his plot and he got hanged and things of that nature. So it's picking up in chapter 16, is retelling the story. Now, in 16, something happens, something interesting happened. Read Esther in the Apocrypha 16 and 10.
Verse 10. And Ammon the Macedonian, the son,
what?
And for Ammon, a Macedonian.
This time it didn't call him an Agagite. It called him a Macedonian. Who else was called a Macedonian in the Apocrypha? I'll give you a clue. Maccabees. And it happened. The son of Philip. Alexandria, the Macedonian. So if they put connection to the Macedonians with the Edomites, we could pinpoint who are the Edomites, right? Now you notice why it always says, and myself and Deacon Balad, we were doing research on this, why they always say the Greco-Roman Empire. Because when you start, the Edomites started with the Greeks. Now, that's a disclaimer, because the Greek term, it just means Hellenistic, which there were different racial groups within the Greek world. But Alexander became the first king of the Greeks, but he was a Macedonian. So sometimes when you use words like Greeks, you have to be very careful, because we were called Greeks too. The Spartans were called Greeks, but they were of the tribe of Dan. Okay? You had Israelites that were called Greeks after the time of the Maccabees, when they became, it says they took an evil thought to join the heathens, and they became to do exercise in their gym and all that. So we were called Greeks. So that term was not really a race. It was a term like an American. It's a term. Okay? So, but his region of homeland was the Macedonia. He was a Greek. He would be called Greek, but his homeland was Macedonia. Where's geographically Macedonia today? Or you can find it today? Europe, even Pacific. Poland, the Black Sea, around the same region of what? The Turkey and the Caucasus Mountains of Georgia, Russia, the same place where the Khazars came from. That's their region, okay? So you see geographically speaking. All right, so let's read.
For Ammon, a Macedonian, son of Amadatha, being indeed a stranger from the Persian blood, and far distant from our goodness.
So he was not a Persian. He was not of the race or the blood of the Persians. Read.
And as a stranger received of us, has so far forth attained the favor that we showed towards every nation.
Come on.
As that he was called our father.
Come on.
And was continually honored of all the next persons unto the king.
Now the word father, it takes, the reason why he was called father, because the word father is Abba, right? Represents what? The head. Ba represents what?
House.
House. So the father is the head of the house. So that term could be used not only for your biological father, but someone who is a community leader. Like that's why you see, like the Italian would call God, the Godfather, and things of that nature. So that term, it's dealing with that. Okay. So let's read.
Verse 12. But he, not bearing his great dignity, went about to deprive us of our kingdom and life.
Come on.
Having by manifold and cunning deceits sought of us the destruction, as well as Mardosius, who saved our life and continually procured our good, and also of blameless Esther, partaker of our kingdom, with their whole nation. For by these means he thought, finding a destitute of friends, to have translated the kingdom of the Persians to the Macedonians.
So he was a spy. He came in because, remember, the Macedonians was always fighting with the Persians. Xerxes and all them, and things of that nature. There was always fighting. Philip was always fighting with the Persians. So the Macedonians were living simultaneously as an empire, because when you go to the Persian Empire, they conquer Iran, certain portion of Turkey, Egypt, right, and Ethiopia, but that the upper part was part of the Macedonians. Philip and his father was up there fighting, so they were a battle for territory. Okay, I think you had your hand up earlier.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I was in the bathroom, so I didn't catch this part. So, like, Agagite, which Amon was, and Macedonian, it's the
Same people. Right. That's where the Edomites were at that time. And this history could be found in the book of Asher, because you got that history, that book tells the history of the Edomites going into Europe and conquering different parts and things of that nature. So Esau did not stood in the land of Edom or Mount Seir. He migrated to different parts. That's why it says, we are reproached. Our land is desolate, but we will build and rebuild a place. And the Most High said, they will build, but I will turn down. That in the book of Obadiah. Okay, so the Macedonians, who are, when you go into the history, are the Edomites, but they call themselves Macedonians. They go by different names. There's another, and like I said, I was rushing, so I apologize because I lost the key that we were running around trying to find this thing. I wanted to add, because when you go into the history of the Macedonian, a great founder of their race or their kingdom is Timaeus. T-A-M-S. It's like Teman. That was another son of Esau, when you go into the Duke of Esau. But I didn't have time to deal with that and things of that nature. But they hide themselves among different nations and things of that nature. So it could have been two things. The Macedonian kingdom could have pre-existed Esau, and he conquered that area and began to call himself Macedonian, or they're the founder of Macedonian. And the reason why I'm saying that, because Mount Seir is associated with Esau, but Mount Seir predates Esau. They conquered Mount Seir, and they began to call themselves Mount Seir. That's why the scripture says Esau hide himself among the nation. So that's what he does. So remember in the Roman Empire, that the beast, the fourth beast, had a characteristics of the three previous. It was, it had a leopard, it had bare feet, and it had a lion's mouth. And when you go into what the understanding is that the Roman Empire kind of learned a little bit from its previous. So if the Macedonians, who are the Greeks, who are the forerunner of Alexandria the Great, and it was the Persian that got the idea of religious freedom. You could worship whatever God, and the Hellenistic Greek world was known for that. That's probably where they got it from. Haman. Yeah, this is a good idea. Worship different gods. Why? It makes it harder for us to conquer a nation if we have to force them to worship our God. So that's the reason why. And who knows? There was probably another Macedonian in the Babylonian Empire when Nebuchadnezzar spying. You understand? And that's why when they perfected their mastery of empire building with the Romans. But Esau was always there. Okay? Go ahead.
Would Unkelus be considered Esau also?
Hunkelus. Give me the history.
Who wrote Targum and Zohar? Would he also be part of that? Because we converted him.
Hunkelus.
That wrote the Aramaic.
Hunkelus, he's a convert? Yeah. And what race he's from, though? We have to find out. Let me get the history. So you say Hunkelus, who translated the Unkelus, who translated the Targum, is right in the 1800, I think. Right. Right. Right.
What's his name? In one of the lessons.
Yeah, it was Onkelos, but there was it him that wrote the.
Yeah, Onkelos wrote the Targum. We wrote it in Aramaic.
Okay.
Translated.
Right.
They going by down there in Aramaic part.
What was the guy that Elder Rawchaa brought out that he brought out that his father, who was a Roman, said, listen, convert to something that has no value now, and then later on, okay, so that's interesting. I had to get that history. Okay, I didn't put the connection in regards to that, so we have to look at that. Okay, so you never know. You know, the working of iniquity is at hand. You know, it was even back then. So that's how Esau operates and things of that nature. So you know, even who saw that taping with the Jewish so-called rabbi that he said, yeah, many of the African Americans are Jews, you know, and many of them believe that we are converts, and you know, they may have some points because many of our sages are actually Roman converts. Remember when he said that? So we have to take these things as a grain of salt when it comes to when we read certain history, like the Jewish Encyclopedia, the Talmud, the Mishra, because they had their hands in these things and things. That so it's we have to take it for the grain of salt. You know, the end of the law is Christ, so everything stops with him and the apostles and the epistles. Okay, in regards of understanding certain things, but it's interesting to learn those things because it kind of gives you a window in how they view the things and more importantly, how did the nations view the law after they took over the law? Okay, that's why the Talmud, when you read it, it shows you that these people are Gentiles trying to figure things out. There's so much arguing going back and forth. This rabbi says this because the Spirit of the Most High is not in them. So they're the Talmud is gonna be a continual talk because they don't get it. It's not their book, it's our book. We could read it, we could figure it out. You know, we get the spirit of what he was going to say. Is the word has more life with us. We could get it. It's spiritual. We're connected to this book much more than any other nation. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. All right, and the slide's almost done. All right, so real quick, we're not going to read this, but you can read this on your own. I should put this a little bigger. This is Antiquities of the Jews, book 11, chapter 6, go into this history. Okay, so it goes in more details and things of that nature. You can go out and read on your own. This is dealing with the history of Haman, the Amalek, okay, and things of that nature. Okay, it goes into that and how, you know, the Persians used to worship him and so forth, so on. So, you know, and I think the reason why they used to worship him in the Jewish Encyclopedia, he was an astrologer, so he was like, now don't go to war now. The stars are saying go to war tomorrow. So he was kind of viewed as a wise man because of that. Okay, but that's other sources. Okay, next slide. Okay, and I think this is. Next slide, the same. I'm not going to read it. Next slide, it's the same basically story that we read in the book of Josephus. Okay. All right. Next slide. All right. So this is a history. So if the Edomites are tied to the Macedonians, and they one and the same, we should know a brief history of who are the Macedonians. Okay. So this is from this website. In the bottom, there's the sources here. You can get it online, and a short history of the Macedonians. So let's read it real quick. We're not going to touch everything, but we're going to touch, you know, just the important points. Do we need more battery?
No, good.
Okay, outstanding.
Although Macedonia is a young state which became independent in 1991, its roots runs deep in the history. The name Macedonia is in fact the oldest surviving name of a country in the continent of Europe.
And I'm doing research on these names because it's very important for you to understand what the etymology of these names, because it gives you get a better understanding. Let's read.
Archaeological evidence show that the old European civilization flourished in Macedonia between 7000 and 3500 BC. Macedonia is located in the center of the southern.
Now you got to take it this number, because the reason why they use this number, they're trying to shift oldest civilization in Europe. And now what they're doing is that because they were, for many years, they're going into that Africa is the cradle of civilization. and you got the Afrikaners, and after that you got the, what's the other guy? The Neanderthal. So the Afrikaners went into Europe and became Neanderthal, right? But they are now shifting that paradigm because they're saying, well, we found DNA and evidence that the Neanderthal migrated or evolved separate from the Afrikaners. And they kind of intermingle with one another. So the Neanderthal must have an older history than the Afrikaners, you know, evolution. So if they're trying to separate themselves. This is old pseudoscience that came up in the 1800s, reemerging. Because who came up with the out of Africa theory? Who was the first guy who came up with out of Africa theory? Come on, scholars. Who? Nope. Who was the first guy that said civilization came out of Africa?
Oh, the guy that had that fasting.
It's coming. Say it again.
Darwin.
Darwin, the evolutionist, yes. Right? So when you go into the writings of Darwin and different people that picked up as his theory, a lot of African American so-called will say, you see, out of Africa, we're the first originators. But when you read the literature, the literature, it is racist as heck. This is what they say. You had the first man in Africa, Lucy. You ever heard Lucy? The first, you know, old, you know, little, they found a bone, and it's been debunked 1,000 times. But they'll say it was, you know, the oldest Africans were in Africa, right? And they began to migrate to Europe and in the Middle East. And because Africa, it was hot, there was no need for the brains to involved, because when they went into Europe, it got colder. And it's for more different seasons. So therefore, your brain has to get smarter or died. So then the Afrikaners became Neanderthal. They began to learn how to kill and eat and things of that nature, and know how to build fire, because if it's cold, you need fire, so the brain evolved. So the Afrikaners became more advanced when they went to Europe because of the climate. You understand? So it's a racist ideology, and that's the reason why the African, you know, they haven't really evolved as us European, because the climate. The cold made them smarter because it forced them to survive and get fired and clothing. So they had to build stuff for the season. So that's the theory out of Africa. Look it up. It's racist as heck, okay? Right. So, but now they're switching and saying, well, we got some evidence that the Macedonian civilization is 7,000, you know, 335 BC. They're trying to push it back as much as possible, and they're trying to create a separate and apart evolution process. So the Neanderthal had nothing to do with the Afrikaners. They evolved differently and things of that nature. So just watch out for these dates, okay? So let's read.
The ancient Macedonians were a distinct nation, ethnically, linguistically, and culturally different from their neighbors.
That's true. So you watch the clues here, because they were Greeks, but they were different. The Greeks spoke Greek, and they spoke what? The Macedonian. What language they spoke? A lot of the tribes speak it now. No. Latin. They are the progenitors of the Latin language. Okay? So you had Greeks, right? But you had certain Greeks that were speaking Latin. The Macedonians and those Romans were speaking Latin, and the other Greek was speaking what? Greek. So that goes to show you, because sometimes you got to follow the language. What was the official language of the Roman Empire? I mean, of the Roman Catholic Church? Latin. What was the only language you could translate the Bible in? That's where you get the what? The Latin what? Vulgate. Okay, so you got to follow linguistic, you got to follow culture, and what they tell you is these were different from all the other Greeks. They had their own culture, their own language, because these were the Edomites, right? Let's read.
The origin of the Macedonians are in the ancient Brigade substratum, which occupied the whole Macedonian territory, and in Indo-European substratum, which settled here at the end of the second millennium.
Okay, let's read down the second half.
Ancient Macedonia. The history of the ancient Macedonian kingdom begins at Caranus, who was the first known king. The Macedonian...
And I'm doing research on this guy. Read.
The Macedonian dynasty, Agaridae.
A what?
Agaridae.
Dynasty. Doesn't sound very similar. I'm trying to find the word. Agagite. I'm trying to find it. He goes, this is the dynasty. So Agite was a dynasty. And this word sounds very similar. I'm just got to confirm if it's the same people. You know, but they hide it and things of that nature. Let's read. Originated from
Argoscon, a city located in the southwestern Macedonian region.
And that's all I used to find. They don't give you more where the name came from, and they just says it's a city of a region. But people name lands. Land doesn't name people. So somebody named that land, and who is that guy, and where is his origin? I'm trying to find that guy, and I bet you it goes back to the Agagite. So let's keep reading.
Alexander I expanded the kingdom, and by the 5th century BC, the Macedonians had forged a unified kingdom. Alexander was a Persian ally in the Greek-Persian wars. As the Macedonians appeared...
So you got to read those stories, because when the Persian and even the Babylonian Empire, the Macedonians were there. And sometimes they used to ally with the Babylonians. Sometimes they used to, you know, be allied with the Persians. So they were always... See, the Esau MO is this. He's trying to be your friend and try to go up the ranks. And once that doesn't work, then okay, he goes all out war with you. That's why the scripture talks about that you will live by the sword. That was always his thing, is to the sword you will live. So when you go into the history of the Macedonians, they were always sometimes friends with the Persians, sometimes were friends with the Babylonians, sometimes were at odds. But it's always a situation that something goes wrong, because, and clearly the Bible gives a clue that Haggai was trying to translate the kingdom of the Persian to his people, the Macedonians, right? Let's keep reading.
As Macedonia appears on the international scene, the first coins with the king's name on them are made around the year 460. Herodotus sojourns in Macedonia.
And you can read it on your own, you know, and you can go, that's a website, the source, you can read it on his own. Let me see if there's any worth reading here. Pop. All right, Alexander's son, in the bottom, the last paragraph. I just want to pick up certain things there.
Alexander's son, Perdiccas II, worked on starting a war between Athens, maritime power of Sparta.
See, so showing you Athens, because you hear the word Athens, Sparta, you think it's associated with the Macedonians because they are all typecast as Greeks. But they were all different people, because Athens and also that's the Spartans, but Spartia, these are all different groups within the Greek world. So that term is a term of a region, not necessarily of a race. You guys understand? So keep reading.
Sparta, which leads to the Peloponnesian League, and initiating a creation of a Lithians League from the Greek colonies, neighboring Macedonia and Chalcidice, for a war against Athens. And
the original Athens were black too. There's a book called Black Athena, value 1 through 4. It goes into that history that the original Greeks were called Etruscans. And they showed that he was melanated people and things of that nature. Now, these people could be the original Japhetic people, or they could be some Israelites who were trying to do some research who they are, but they were clearly melanated people. The original Greeks, which were the Trestans, predates the Greeks and things of that nature. Okay, so let's just keep reading.
During the Peloponnesian War, Perdiccas is one moment on the side of Athens.
All right, so slide that. you know, you can read that on your own. Next slide. You can skip this. This is more, you know, historical mumbo jumbo. Okay, Philip. This is guy mentioned in the Bible, right? The son, or the father, excuse me, of Alexander. Let's read a little bit about him.
Philip II, the greatest man that Europe have ever given, liberated and unified.
And you got to, Elder Rawchaa made a mention of this, that one of the clues that you have to look out for is when they put the word great in their title. It's usually an Edomite. Alexander the Great. What's his other name? The guy, Constantine the Great. So great, sometimes you got to watch out because that's a clue that they would, you know, elevate themselves to the next, you know, great of what? But, you know, because they know these are their own people, their own descendants, right? So let's read.
Philip II, the greatest man in Europe, had ever given, liberated.
The greatest man in Europe. Okay. who writes this, right? Let's read.
Liberated and unified Macedonia and turned it into the first European power in the modern scene of the world. An armed nation with a common national ideal. He subdued all the Macedonian neighbors and made Macedonia the most powerful kingdom in Balkan. He was especially brutal towards the Greek cities.
So he's showing you that he was not a Greek. But that term sometimes is used for those people, that region. It's like an American. Like he was brutal with the people in the Bronx. And, you know, he was friendly with the, you know, Brooklynites. But they're all Americans. You understand? But they're different sect of people. Okay, let's read.
Towards the Greek cities at the edge of Macedonia. He raised them all around the ground, including the major Greek center of Olynthus and Stagria, Attoli's birthplace, and sold the inhabitants to slavery. Okay, and you can read this, and a lot of them, he was selling us and things of that nature. So read the Apocrypha real quick. In the bottom. The first book of Maccabees, verse 1. And it happened after Alexander, son of Philip.
And it happened after the son of Alexander, the who?
The Macedonian.
The Macedonian. The same he did. So they're associating him with the Macedonian. Haggai was a Macedonian that you could connect the dots. Okay. Now, when you keep reading, right? I asked you to add this too. Go to Maccabees chapter 4. The last verse, 52 or 51. What was the thing that they did after they celebrated the feast? What did the Maccabees did after they celebrated the feast? Come on, scholars. What did they did? Let's read. Maccabees 4. First Maccabees 4. The last verse, whatever it is, 52 or 51. I know it's in the 50, or whatever it is. I could be wrong. It could be 40. My memory. The last verse.
Verse 61.
It's 61?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, it's more than 50, 61. Start at 60.
First Maccabees chapter 4, verse 60. At the time also they built up the Mount Zion with high walls.
So they built it with high walls, read.
And strong towers round about.
And strong towers. Now, who they defeated? Give me more Pacific. The Maccabees. Who did they defeated? Who was the guy that went against them? Who was the evil Antiochus, the evil root that came out of the four? Antiochus Epiphanes, right? When you read. So, and Greek, Alexander was a Macedonian. Philip was his father, the Macedonian. And then out of that was the four generals. Remember when Alexander died? Or he was about to die, he said he's going to divide his kingdom into the four generals. His friends, they grew up with him, right? And out of them, an evil root came out, Antiochus Epiphanes, right? So these were all Macedonians, right? Right? Okay, so keep that in mind. Keep reading, Amav. I mean, Shamar. Amav is in my mind, so excuse me.
Lest the Gentiles should come.
Unless the Gentiles should come and do what?
And tread it down.
Uh-huh.
And they had done as as they had done before.
Come on.
And they set there a garrison to keep it.
To keep it, a garrison is the fen wall, read.
And fortified.
And fortified it, read.
Bethsura, to preserve it.
To preserve it, read.
That the people might have a defense against Idumea.
Against who?
Idumea.
But now they call the Macedonians Idumea. So see how they go back and forth? Because the Macedonians and the Idumea were the same people. That's why they took out the Apocrypha out the Bible. Because it made that connection. It's too close to home. Right? Too close to home. Okay? All right. Next slide. All right. Let's read the commentary is how Christ will fulfill these holy days, the days of Purim and so forth. So let's go to these scriptures, read them real quick. And we're almost done. Psalms 72:14. Matter of fact, how many verses we got here? We got 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, each brother will read. Well, Greg, you can read one. Pick up a verse, get a mic and read it. Shamar, you can start first.
Psalm 72, verse 14.
Come on.
He shall redeem their soul from deceit and violence, and precious shall their blood be.
So you get Psalms, when the next one is on deck, so you know where you're going next. Wait, Shamar, you done?
Yeah.
Okay, read that again.
And he shall redeem their soul from deceit and violence, and precious shall their blood be in his soul.
Okay, next man, come on up. Next man on deck. Maybe be ready for the next scripture. Come on.
O power, proud are risen against me, and the assemblies of violent men have sought after my soul, and have not seen thee before them.
Next man, come on.
The book of Psalms, chapter 140, verse 1. Deliver me, O Lord, from the evil man.
Come on.
Preserve me from the violent man.
Next verse, come on.
Psalms 140, verse 4. Keep me, O Lord, from the hands of the wicked. Preserve me from the violent man who has purpose to overthrow my goings.
Come on, next man.
Psalms 140, verse 11. Let not an evil speaker be established in the earth. Evil shall hunt the violent man to overthrow him.
Next man.
2 Samuel chapter 22, verse 3. The power of my rock, in him will I trust. He is my shield and the horn of my salvation, my high tower and my refuge, my Savior. Thou savest me from violence.
Next man, come on. Bring it up. If you have it, bring it out. Who got it? Come on, Israel. Who has it?
No, I have it, Bible.
Yeah.
I just did not turn to next.
All right, who has it first? Come on. Who has it? You got it. All right, come on, Ganon. What's the next verse? Psalms 18. Who's on deck? Get it. Whoever gets it. Come on.
He that delivered me from my enemy, yea, thou lifted me up above those that rise up against me. Thou hast delivered me from the violent man.
Amen. Next verse. Come on. Who got the mic? And you can turn on the light.
Okay.
If you don't need a mic, you speak loud.
Okay. Oops.
Come on.
But thou art holy, O thou inhabitest the praise of Israel.
Come on.
Our fathers trusted in thee, they trusted, and thou didst deliver them.
Okay, that was it? We got more?
I got it.
Second Ezra, let's go. Come on, let's read it.
Second Esdras.
13, 32 to 38.
And the time shall be when these things shall come to pass, and the signs shall happen which I shewed thee before, and then shall my son be declared, whom thou sawest as the man ascending. And when all the people hear his voice, every man shall in their own land leave the battle that they have one against another. And the innumerable multitude shall be gathered together, as thou sawest them, willing to come and to overcome him by fighting. But he shall stand upon the top of the Mount Zion, and Zion shall come and shall be shewed to all men, being prepared and build it like as thou sawest the hill graven without hands. And this, my son, shall rebuke the wicked inventions of those nations, which for their wicked life are fallen into the tempest. Verse 38. And shall lay before them their evil thoughts, and the torments wherewith they shall begin to be tormented, which are like unto a flame, and he shall destroy them without labor by the law, which is like unto fire.
Okay, amen. Let's give the Most High a hand. All praises to the Most High. All right, amen, amen.